Virginia has been invited by me, Thom Tillis here, to give his minority side position. He's going to speak for the minority report. I'm going to ask him to limit his remarks to 2 or 3 minutes. At the end of that time, Mr. Hoekstra, staff of the Rules Committee, who was involved in the whole process, plus Helen and Bob, if necessary, will add their part to the discussion. Again, limit that to a couple minutes. Not that complicated. When they finish, I will again reiterate what my position is, and anyone who wants to speak at the end of that process will be welcome to. At that point, I am looking to have you approve by voice the North Carolina delegation supporting leadership's position. This late in the game, if you don't remember anything else, remember, support your leadership. You think I'm being heavy-handed? I am, but for a whole host of reasons. We will have a full, frank, and clear discussion. Come for that calendar. Morton, again, you're welcome. Appreciate you being here and all your work for many, many years. But after he has finished, answer a couple questions necessary. I'm going to ask him to leave, and anyone else in the room who is not a delegate or an alternate or properly connected to North Carolina, I'm going to ask you to leave as well so that we can have our family discussion and finish the process.
Can we have a brief synopsis of what the minority report is before y'all start the discussion?
Well, yes, I can give you my version. The minority report is, an effort by 28 people out of 100 and how many?
112.
In other words, it was barely over the limit that you had to have to submit a minority report, which objected, and all that's legitimate, to some changes that are proposed in the rules. Remember, you've got the Convention Rules Committee, and you've got the RNC Rules Committee. So, more confusion there. But, having said all that, it is a minority report, made in by the skin of its teeth, and end of the day, it does not affect North Carolina. It's mostly about proportionality and assignment of delegates. That's what the big issue is. And am I basically right about that, Morton? Martin?
Not exactly.
Okay, but that's my understanding of it. Again, keeping it simple, this is all plays a game. All right. Another clarifying question.
I understand there are 2 minority reports with 2 rules changes. Are we discussing those together or one after the
I
other?
think they're being held together.
There's a Rule 12 and a Rule 15 minority report. And I would defer to Mr. Blackwell. I don't know which report he would be speaking to, but likely the Rule 15 minority report. Or both.
I came prepared to discuss both of them.
Okay.
Both are relevant.
Okay, that's fine. All right. Somebody else, Morton, would you please, again, welcome, come forward or over there?
Sure.
It's a little better. Yes.
Point of order, would it make sense to have staff for the benefit of people that don't understand just the issues, proposed changes, to have staff describe them? And then the gentleman who may be speaking against them speak after everybody's got an understanding of it. If we could have the staff explain, does that make sense?
I like that. Is that okay with you, Morton? Hoekstra, would you explain from the technical aspect what exactly it is we're talking about?
Sure. So we can, I guess, start with Rule 15. The Convention Rules Committee met on last Friday. They had a meeting that lasted approximately 9 hours and adopted a number of changes to the RNC rules. One of the changes was an amendment to Rule 15, originally offered by Mr. Ginsburg of the District of Columbia. Each state, as you know, has 2 representatives on the RNC, on the Convention Rules Committee. This was proposed by Mr. Ginsburg of the District of Columbia. It made a number of changes to Rule 15 about the selection of delegates for the convention, and addressed the several issues which he believed to be pertinent to the nominating process. There was a significant debate back and forth on this, and at one point there was a compromise amendment that was offered by Henry Barber of Mississippi that amended the changes to that amended Rule 15 further, a second amendment, and that became the compromise amendment that was adopted to the rules package that was approved by the Convention Rules Committee. So Rule 15, it deals with the selection of delegates. Mr. Blackwell certainly is much more of an expert on the rules and the rules process than I could ever hope to be. So he will certainly do a good job presenting his side of the argument. I wanted to clarify on the minority report, it is 25% of the 112 members of the Convention Rules Committee must sign on to it to submit a minority report. 25% is 28 out of 112, and I believe they have a few more signatures than that, maybe 30, 32, or 33, but Mr. Blackwell can again address that. But Rule 12 is a issue with the primary calendar. I'm not my area of expertise, so I'd be glad to get any questions answered that you may have following this meeting, or even during this meeting. I could be in communication with the RNC legal team and get some answers on that if any clarification is needed. But again, it's about the primary calendar and about when states hold their primaries. So, yes, if Mr. Blackwell wants to go ahead, if you want to do questions.
Bob and Helen both are on the rules committee. Do you have anything you want to add to that from a technical standpoint or whatever?
Yes, I can say that both of these rule changes were debated extensively in this meeting, probably well over an hour on Rule 12, and probably 2 to 3 hours on Rule 15. Rule 15 underwent a number of amendments that brought together people who had originally opposed them, but they worked out compromise language that was presented back to the committee that was then approved. So I can say that the committee has done a great deal of work on this. The chairman of the committee, Governor Sununu, made sure that through the process that everyone was heard. He provided ample time for amendments and discussions and actually some reconsiderations. And as a result of all of that deliberation, these two rules were approved, and it was not what I would call a close vote. It was not a 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 vote difference within the committee. There was a specific majority on the votes taken. So the committee has done a tremendous amount of work and did report out its entire rule report.
Why are we taking video? This is kind of a family meeting. You like taking video? You think that's important?
For us.
It would be helpful if we had an explanation of what the rule as adopted by the committee says and what the proposal to change it says. That's
Rather than this level of support, what is it?
The minority report just wants to rescind the new rule.
Right. All right. You want to do that? Helen? You want? You don't hear Helen? Okay, I will go.
Rule 12. Rule 12 is a total addition, and it's called amendments. The Republican National Committee may, by 3/4 vote of its entire membership, amend Rules 1 through 11 and 13 through 25. Any such amendment shall be considered by the Republican National Committee only if it is passed by a majority rule of the Standing Committee on Rules after having been submitted in writing at least 10 days in advance of its consideration by the Republican National Committee, and shall take effect 30 days after adoption. No such amendment adopted after September 30th, 2014. And just let me explain. the rules committee here,
And that's the new rule.
that's the new one.
Everybody understand? Everybody got that?
It has a very high threshold for approval by the RNC. It is 75%, 3/4 of all of the members. Not the members at the meeting, but all of the members of the RNC committee. So it's set a very high threshold, and they may only make amendments during a limited period of time.
Okay, to add to that, Bob, would you tell from your standpoint why the committee felt like that rule change was necessary? Morton, we're kind of out of order here, but
My understanding is it's simple, that they ask to have a little bit more flexibility in being able to manage these issues. Sometimes you have unintended consequences that you can't wait to have the full convention, rules committee back in.
They can change the rules to
Apparently,
suit
RNC
what they
will
want
be
to
a
do.
three-quarter vote, which is a significantly high standard to make sure that it is something that everybody wants. And my understanding, Buxton, is before that's finally implemented, the next convention and changes are made, then they will go ahead and have it validated by the rules committee. This is the one that presently wanted for.
and that is some of the specific issues, the unintended consequences were some of the delegate allotments, is that correct? Can you go a little further with that?
Well, I think that's on the other, that's on number 16, that's not number 12.
Okay, so what, again, on this one, why did they think this was necessary? I'm just trying to give people background.
Just a flexibility issue, because there are a lot of times when a new rule comes forward and or when, things change, they change the election process in the primaries. Some people think it's good, some people think it's not. Meet the needs of the Republican Party, and what they're saying is let's not get bounded, let's see if we can find some flexibility for a future.
Is that clear to everybody? We got 50 states.
You've got,
Under the current rules, you can only change the rules once every 4
years
years during the
okay.
convention.
And
This
again,
is
we got
the
50
same
states, not 57 like Biden or Obama did. But there are a lot of different things going on out there. So just, again, trying to give you a little more background.
Yeah, let me ask this for background. You're asking for particular flexibility, whereas normally it would take the convention to change the rules. You want to delegate that authority to the national committee with a supermajority to change rules that otherwise only the convention could change.
that's correct. The rules committee of the RNC.
The rules committee of the whole convention, such as what's meeting right now. But my question is, if this is required for flexibility, has it ever been required before? Has the Republican Party ever had that authority lodged in the RNC before?
Sorry. No. No, this is a new Rule 12. It's a new Rule 12. They provide
Again, we
flexibility.
need to be careful with our words. To me, it's not about authority. Authority means we're from headquarters. We're going to impose this on them. My understanding of the process, this gives them flexibility and ability in cases.
To change the rules last
If they
minute.
can by their own,
Like-
own decision change the rule, that's authority.
Depends on use or abuse of power. Okay?
Yeah, I'm not saying it's abuse, I'm just asking what.
Robin, it does have to be validated in the future by the rules, the convention committee rules.
All right, and again, I'm not picking on you, but I don't want one of our family members to appear on national news saying something that they didn't mean or is out of context. So unless you all disagree, I really wish you would not do that.
I know, you're my representative. I mean, you're an elected position holder.
I can't hear what you're saying.
You don't want your comments to be heard publicly, is what you're saying?
Lord, camera's on, I can read your lips, okay? What did you say?
She said that if she asked if you don't want your comments heard publicly.
On record.
I don't mind mine being heard publicly, but again, please be discreet, folks. Let me remind everybody, if you think I'm a little bit agitated, I am. We are here to win an election. We are here to where somebody purposely or inadvertently went out and turned this daggone convention into a spectacle where the media can say these Republicans can't decide whether fried or scrambled. That's what we want. a place where any little thing will be used against us. So please, please, please be aware. Yes, sir.
Do we have any media in the room?
Video camera on. Thank you.
Scott told me. Yeah.
They'll listen to you more than you.
We're not doing, this is, let's go outside. Not just for a second.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
It's appropriate, a motion to not allow any video or audio coverage.
We're here as representatives to the people of North Carolina, and I think that they should have a right to know what's going on with the people we're representing.
But it's a cause meeting. We're trying to settle something among ourselves.
Are you a gas?
Stand down. Hold still. We do represent people of North Carolina. I have given you my concerns and my reasons. If you let me down by virtue of your camera or somebody else's or somebody's quote, I and Chris Christie will both come back. Did I have the authority or ability to come in and tell you what not to do? I would question your judgment. I think you're making a mistake. Make that clear. But having said that, use wisdom. Yes, ma'am.
Well, I have a different way of looking at it.
Okay.
It's just providing more people than the people in this room to be able to hear the words that you're saying. Not everybody could come here. One thing about
The convention is public. We're here talking about an issue that we're going to be brought up in the convention.
Please raise your hand. Anyone who is not a delegate or an alternate, please raise your hand.
Who's not?
All right. If you are a guest, you have permission to be here. You can stay and tell me who you are. Sorry for the delay.
I'm a guest of Matty Crowder.
Yes.
I'm a guest of Matty Crowder and alternate. Just vote.
Okay. Anybody else that doesn't? Yes, ma'am.
I'm a guest of Rebecca Christenberry.
I'm a guest of Intimidates. I live in Charlotte.
All right. Somebody keep up with it. Yeah. All right.
You're no guest.
Point of order.
Young lady holding the camera, did not raise her hand for any kind of...
Yes, I am a guest of Daniel Repty.
You said she's a delegate, she's not a delegate. No, you said she's a
All right.
You said she was a delegate. Mr. Chairman, my motion is that no audio or video recording to be of this committee. This is a very private
This is
meeting.
not a business meeting. There are no motions or voting on that.
You are not recognized, please.
Sorry.
I don't think that we have, and if you all want to have a vote and do that, I think, again, that creates another cloud on the horizon. Let's just proceed and do what we need to do. All right, back on track. Mr. Blackwell, welcome to our family of North Carolinians. Please come up and enlighten us.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Give us a little background. This fella, along with Howard Coble, has got the moxie to wear a seersucker suit. You gotta give him a hand. He has definitely earned the right to be here, and we appreciate all your long years of service. Excuse me, I had to say that.
Thank you. My wife and I grew up in Baton Rouge, where seersucker is very common. I consider seersucker to be my native costume. Happy to be here. I don't think that it's going to be possible within 2 or 3 minutes to discuss these issues as witnessed by the 15 minutes that has already been spent on it. So I'd like to have a little more time than that. And I think I'm not going to be taking up much of your time, but I appreciate the invitation to come. I'm happy to do this. I've been National Committee man from Virginia since 1988. I have
attended all the meetings of the Convention Rules Committee starting in 1972. My wife and I have contributed major donations this year to the Ronnie O'Brien campaign, and I believe we have to defeat Barack Obama on the floor of the convention tomorrow. I'll be handing out copies of this booklet I created, which reads, "What did you expect from an Obama, from an acorn organizer?" What happened in the Rules Committee was a lot of normal business, altering minor things, but there was a whole series of proposals that were largely put forward by the gentleman mentioned earlier, Ben Ginsburg. Every single one of those proposals centralized power within the Republican Party, the National Committee, and many of them made it much more difficult for anything to rise from the bottom to the top and focus on top-down stuff. The minority reports, which has in the middle 30s that I know of, and is making progress across many states as people can see what is in it, is about 2 rules. One of them is the new Rule 12, and it was described what it says. It would allow the Republican National Committee by a 3/4 vote to change the rules of the Republican Party, handing National Party officials the power to change National Party rules adopted by state grassroots leaders of the Republican National Convention. For generations, the prohibition of manipulated changes in the national rules of the Republican Party between national conventions has served as one of the crown jewels of our party. It is a power grab which opens the door to many future power grabs. Ladies and gentlemen, a 3/4 vote of the Republican National Committee is not a sufficient protection, because I've been on the committee a long time, 24 years now, and I'm telling you that what it in effect is, it gives the national chairman the right to change the rules, because the national chairman can get 3/4 vote for anything that he wants on a whim. He can get it, and the argument, well, it's the leadership that wants it, is compelling at the national committee, and the national chairman has the power of the purse, because money flows from the national committee to the states, and members of the committee are not likely to vote against anything proposed by the national chairman. It is a disaster, in my judgment. It is the worst single proposal that I have ever seen passed by a convention rules committee. The Democrats do this sort of thing all the time. They've always been able to change the rules between conventions. Always. And what they do is they spend the period between conventions with different factions or different Democrat candidates maneuvering to change the rules in order to favor their faction or their candidates. This is a terrible precedent, and takes away the stability of our rules between conventions. So that's the issue on Rule 12. Now, the other amendments are to Rule 15, which under the new numbering would be Rule 16. And the first of them is absolutely shocking. We spent years and years and election cycles trying to figure out a way to stop the front loading of the delegate selection process so that we wouldn't have closer and closer to what amounts to a national primary. It was debated at convention after convention, and finally for this election cycle we came upon a system which said that any state which selects or binds its delegates in March would have to employ some kind of proportional representation among the candidates who are receiving votes in the primary. And after that, after the 1st of April, the state could have a winner-take-all primary. The purpose of it was to spread out the selection so you didn't have a super duper Tuesday where a high percentage of the delegates are selected at once, and eliminates the possibility for the vetting of the candidate over a long period of time. This system worked. We had a significant period of time where the candidates were vetted many times in this process. Different candidates were ahead in the polls. And conceivably, if we had had a national primary on any one of those days, one of those other people would have won the nomination. But we had a vetting. And I don't believe anybody can maintain that our candidate for president is a better candidate because he went through that long vetting process. He is a much stronger candidate because he had that process. And this is a bizarre circumstance. I asked Ben Ginsberg, why are you doing this? Because he represented himself as the spokesman for the Romney campaign. And this is what he told me, ladies and gentlemen. He says, well, that wasn't our proposal. We're doing it as a favor for some friends. That's what he told me. And that's...
I didn't understand, what does it change?
The change just changes one word. It says that states that select their delegates in March, currently it says shall have proportional allocation based on the primary votes. The word is changed from shall to may, which means Katie bar the door. You can have winner-take-all primaries anytime throughout the period. I guarantee you what will happen is there will be again a rush towards the first Tuesday in March, and we come closer again to having a national primary, which virtually the entire party up until last Friday agreed was a bad idea. So that's the first one in Rule, the old Rule 15, the new Rule 16. The final thing which they did, which is particularly horrifying to me, is they inserted a rule which allows the presidential candidates to disavow, after a state party has selected its delegates based on the rules adopted by the state party, it allows the presidential candidates to disavow and remove people who were elected delegates through the normal process within the state. That's pretty shocking. And
Doesn't impact us. We don't do it that way.
well, that's true, but these are national rules. In Virginia, we had a convention with 4,000 delegates, grassroots people, lots of establishment, longtime party activists, Tea Party people, Ron Paul people. 4,000 people came to participate, and the party establishment treated everybody fairly. We welcomed everybody in. It was fair. It was polite. It was even cordial. We came up with a consensus agreement among the different factions. The nominations committee came up with 13 names for people to be at-large delegates. The nominations committee report was adopted by the convention of all these diverse people, was approved unanimously. Our grassroots activists who were newly active because they wanted to participate in the party are going to be infuriated by the institution of a system where if you are elected under the rules of the party and you play by the rules, that you can be removed as a delegate by presidential candidates. It is a horrible thing, and it is going to make it more difficult to carry the Commonwealth of Virginia for our candidate, which we dearly want to do. So I thank you for the opportunity to address you.
Would you come ask a couple questions, then I'm going to ask you to leave unless people say they don't want to do that. Sure. You got a question from Jeff Long.
I don't understand how this rule would not apply to North Carolina. We have delegates which are approved at the county level, and then go to district and the state. And I don't see how this rule would not allow the presidential candidate to take advantage of which is his delegates.
It was not I who said it didn't apply to North Carolina. I don't know what your rules are. If you elect delegates through rules that are approved by the North Carolina Republican Party, and you have a binding primary, then the presidential candidates will have the right under this rule, as it says in the rule, to disallow those people to be delegates. They will be removed as delegates because the presidential campaign says no. And what I anticipate is going to happen under those circumstances is that fewer grassroots people are going to be named delegates, and the candidates are going to name top donors to their campaigns to fill
That's what North Carolina wants, right?
If you want to show me the door, I'm happy to go. My wife and I have an event tonight. I appreciate your invitation.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Mr. Holmstrom.
Carolyn needs to read number 16.
Can you read it loud, please? Excuse me? Can you read it loud? I will try to speak as loud as I can. Can everyone hear me? Okay. There are two parts in the new Rule 16, formerly Rule 15, that Mr. Blackwell addressed. I would like to go to the first one that he addressed, which states that any presidential primary, caucus, convention, or other process to elect, select, or bind delegates to the national convention that occurs prior to April 1st in the year in which the national convention is held may is a key word here, provide for the allocation of delegates on a proportional basis. The rule governing this year, this convention, said that it shall provide for the allocation on a proportional basis. There was much discussion on this. The amendment to change shall to may was passed. It was brought back on reconsideration to change may back to shall. The vote that I wrote down was that 30 people wanted to change it back to shall. 58 people wanted it to stay may. So again, there is a clear majority within the Rules Committee for the change that the minority is now challenging. So that's point one on this. And the shall and the may, with it being a may, I understand that it is a state determination. The next one, where I think really the most complex discussion and criticism has been laid, is the binding and allocation of national delegates. And it says, for any manner of binding or allocating delegates permitted by these rules, no delegate or alternate delegate who is bound or allocated to a particular presidential candidate may be certified under Rule 20 if the presidential candidate to whom the delegate or alternate delegate is bound or allocated has, in consultation with the state party, disavowed the delegate or alternate delegate. This went through a number of amendments. Great discussion over a couple of hours. And it was passed by a large majority of the Rules Committee. It was amended by people who were pro and con on it, and they reached a compromise. And the compromises that they reached in allowing this amendment to pass were two. One, that the state party would be in consultation. That was one thing that was added. And the second was the word disavowed. In the original motion, the word disavowed was approved. So it changed from an approval to a disavowal. So those were the two changes in there. As I say, it underwent much discussion, much alteration, and did pass by more than a few votes in the Rules Committee.
Folks, a couple things I want to remind you of. Morton Blackwell is a Republican hero. He told you he's been involved 24 years. I've known the man the majority of those 24 years. He has earned the right to be at the table. But having said that, let me remind you of something else. Morton Blackwell came in here and gave you his opinion. It's not 1 and 1 equals 2. It's not 4 times 4 is 16. It's how he sees it from his 24-year experience. I'm not saying that's not valid, but I am saying that that should not carry the day. But you heard your own member of the committee say, and the other member, Senator Rucho, is the discussion was fair. All sides were heard. Compromises were made. We went through a similar process in our state convention. And when this meeting is over, I would appreciate anyone who considers themselves whatever, sit down with me at a table and we'll talk about the results of what happened here. Particularly want to talk to the person that invited Morton Blackwell. I don't want you to invite, I don't want you to identify yourself, but the one thing you don't need when you're trying to run a meeting is a surprise like that. I have gone to a lot of trouble, it's my job, to find out the facts and to bring them to you. But now we have interjected over a 30-minute period someone's opinion, a valid opinion, and he has the right to have it, but this was not the place. So back to the issue at hand, defeating Barack Obama. Passions about a relatively small issue, and I'll tell you why I say relatively small, to again undermine our effort to defeat Obama. What have we done? Folks, you elect leadership to lead. I have gotten to know, over a period of years, Reince Priebus. He brought this party back from the grave with hard work, with perspiration, with incredible dedication. Maybe you don't agree with everything he did. I'm sure I wouldn't. But if you were to come in at this point and disavow or to undo what he has done by allowing this to happen, and oh, by the way, the facts support not supporting a minority report, then think about what you have done. Senator Rucho, another member from me.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's interesting because, we talked about North Carolina, and what we did is supported proportional representation based on what the will of the people was, and the will of the people occurred during the primary election. Whatever percentage of Romney and any of the other candidates was reflected ideally into who the delegates were as to what was happening. And a lot of this is based on the fact that there is some confusion in other states, not here, but other states where they had a vote of 70%. I think it was Nebraska had a 70% vote for Romney, and 8 or 9 of the 10 of them were not committed to Romney. And they basically disallowed the will of the people. We follow the rules. That's why we're, pretty much why we're not, this is not our problem. Correct. We follow the rules these other states.
That's because they changed the rules.
Virginia, I'm sure he, well respected there, but they didn't even let two of the candidates get on the ballot. They've got a real problem. We don't have that problem. All we're trying to do is keep this ball moving. Everybody was represented as far as delegates based on percentages in the primary election, which is the people who we're representing. Okay, and the bottom line is this really needs to move forward. And as representative, let's keep our eye on the ball. And
This is the first hand I saw in blue. Yes, sir.
My voice isn't real loud, so you may not be able to hear me. But since my time as a Republican, I've been trained up by Morton Blackwell, never known until amendments. So I'm not sure what that comment about him from West Virginia wanted to do there. But that guy deserves everybody's respect in here. Second thing is, my question is, if this allows the RNC, whoever the grand poobah is and how great they are, to change up the delegates, for a presidential candidate, does that mean that North Carolina's primary will no longer be worth a tool because the Super Tuesday guys, whoever wins it, now they become ipso facto winners?
I don't.
Certainly.
Helen, you want to answer this?
I was just going to say that's going to be on a state-by-state basis. It's not taking 5 or 6 states or more who are in the Super Tuesday. It's on a delegation by delegation, a state by state.
And why does the rule give the chairman the power?
It gives it the two entities involved in this amendment are the presidential candidates and the state party.
All right, we got a hand back here.
Yeah, you guys were saying that it doesn't impact North Carolina because our delegates are already bound to the candidates, but does North Carolina currently allow the state party and the president to unseat delegates that are chosen? Right, so, but this rule would subject it to their approval.
Mr. Chairman, with all due respect, may we limit our comments and discussion to our alternates and delegates and not our guests?
Yeah, please. And what do you think?
On the clarification of that, does this mean when we have our convention and we have, say, in this election, we had some Santorum declared candidates because he was still in the race when we had ours, does this mean that they will change those up to another candidate? Is that what the clarification is, or will they still be their candidate until they're released by the nominee or by that candidate?
They are bound to their candidate until they're released by their person.
Okay.
All right, come on, jump around. Glenn?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm not really as disturbed by the delegate rule as some of my peers are, because actually in 2008 we could have used that. We had some state delegates for our candidates, and that was very disturbing. So I understand the issue behind that. I am disturbed at the concept of being able to change the rules in the middle of the game, which I don't like the idea of having we have a 4-year cycle between presidential elections. At the beginning of that 4-year cycle, everyone who wants to get involved knows the rules of the game, and that those rules will be the rules until the election. If we go to a model where we can start changing, now I read it, I agree, it's a high bar, 75%. But I really do not like the idea of being able to switch the rules around from a central authority whenever we want to, because our candidates won't know what's going on, the people who support them won't know what's going on, the grassroots activists will become confused, and then it will be much, much harder to defeat Barack Obama.
Well, respectfully and kindly, this probably going back and forth, but in today's age of cameras and internets and everything, people from back home, before we got out of the meeting, were emailing me today. But there's too much information out there. That's why I wanted to have a family meeting where the facts are presented. I'm going to do this geographically. I can't keep up with it.
Well, I'm the one who invited Mark Blackwell. I was wanting to understand both sides of the story, because I didn't think we actually even had a side at the time. I wanted to understand what the minority report, he's the one who wrote it. I wanted to understand his perspective. I personally would be scared if people work to become delegates and the highest donor would say, no, you're out, the next person gets to pick. And that would bother me greatly. I'm a grassroots activist. I work hard. I'm a good Republican. I've always been a Republican. And I would hate for people who work hard to not for a big donor to replace.
Okay, I appreciate that.
Thank you.
And it's some value, but with my dying breath, I will not ever let something like that happen. Do I have complete control? No, but neither does anybody else. Yes, sir.
It's my understanding, you two were our representatives on the Rules Committee?
Yes.
And so you guys sat through all these committees and listened to everything, and as did he, but you have your own opinion. You're our representatives. Are you both comfortable with the way this thing did, or did either of you sign on this minority report?
No, I did not sign on to the
Did either of you, so neither of you subscribe to this?
That's
All right. So you guys are representatives, so you're urging us to go with your report. Is that what I hear?
I'm urging you to support the report of amended rules that was approved by significant margin by the Rules Committee.
And you don't buy his interpretation, is that correct?
No, I
Because he
don't.
had an interpretation,
I don't.
and his interpretation was compelling, but you guys don't.
His
Okay.
interpretation is compelling. There are people who have signed on to it.
Okay.
But I can tell you, the distinct majority of the people who are delegates to this convention approve the rules. They do not buy into his opinion.
Okay, so you guys are not, okay.
Yeah, and
I just want to clarify that.
And
because-
I want to reiterate, yeah, there was an incredible amount of discussions. There was back and forth. There were compromises made and language changed such that many of the people in the room who had initially had serious reservations and were against the changes in Rule 15 were able to accept it.
Okay, I'm calm down now. Got a couple more.
First thing I want to say is Chairman Hayes is absolutely right. This really doesn't affect North Carolina because North Carolina, number one, plays fair. However, this does affect things nationally, and that's my concern. Where it could affect North Carolina is we could become, pardon my expression, even more irrelevant because it could already be decided even earlier, and we go to the primary basically to vote for just because he's the nominee. That's where it could affect us, and with all due respect, that's why I would support my vote.
Well, there's a huge fundraising advantage to states who go early because all the candidates come. So we were, I think it's well said, we had that problem. But again, your point is well taken. We had folks who were very highly qualified and they sat through the whole thing. We're at the time for decision now. How many of you all have something that's really going to make a big difference if I recognize you?
Raise your hand.
I really respect you, and I really respect you, but I can't read this anyway. But it affects North Carolina greatly. And I'll read it to everyone. It says, for any manner of binding or allocating delegates permitted by these rules, no delegate or alternate delegate who is bound or alternated or allocated to a particular presidential candidate may be certified under Rule 19 if the presidential candidate to whom the delegate or alternate delegate is bound or allocated has, in consultation with the state party, disavowed delegate or alternate delegate. So it's true, it's absolutely true that the allocation of delegates to each candidate will stay the same. That's in state law, in state statute. But who those people are can be vetoed by Romney or Santorum or whoever. And we work very hard. It's the lifeblood of this party that we bring new people in, we get them to county conventions, we get them to districts, so that they can elect grassroots people. This is grassroots versus people at the top. And for someone to work that hard, get through the process, and then to have a presidential candidate come in and say, no, we'd rather have my crony over here, my fundraiser over here, my lawyer over here, fill those slots, so they can ram through my position. That's just wrong. We are, and the analogy would be if Ben Perdue or Pat McCrory were to tell county conventions who they're allowed to send to the state convention. The state convention, the main purpose is, yes, to ratify the nomination of the candidate, but more importantly, it's to run the party. And the party chooses candidates. The candidate does not choose the party.
Thank you. I agree, but I disagree. Disagree because this ain't going to happen here. But what you say about the language, and I'm not a lawyer, I don't think you are either, so we're more than qualified to speak to the issue. anytime you try to codify something into law, I got a point, stick with me a minute, we'll bring this thing to a close. Anytime you try to codify something into a law, the law of unintended consequences is typically greater than the law you tried to write.
It's true.
As we speak, and I've been holding on, hoping to hear, this has created a lot of conversation and concern amongst our broader family. People much further up the line than all of us put together are working to resolve the law of unintended consequences, the issues that have come up. Yeah, unfortunately, I have to say we're a little bit like Nancy Pelosi.
What?
You don't know what's in the bill.
It's so simple. They just read it.
Don't really mean that, but what has happened after all this discussion, think about the hours of talk and discussion that went on and finally reduced it to writing. The point that Jeff made is absolutely relevant. So I would expect, I can't tell you with total certainty, but I would expect that these problems are going to be fixed. The people are going to be heard. The will of the people will properly be recognized and acknowledged. And as Churchill said, at the end of all this, we'll do the right thing. And unlike the other side, they don't have these discussions. So we do.
Question.
This man has got a question.
I have a question.
His passion got me.
Thank you. Thanks, Chairman. No, and maybe Helen, maybe you can clarify. My understanding has been that it would take I read it was take 6 states to bring this up for something on the floor, or it takes 6 states to
Hear the minority report.
Is that correct? Okay, that's correct. Okay, it takes 6 states. I can assure you that it's going to have more than 6 states. I just want us to be one of more than 6 states. That's all. That's all.
To be one of those less than 6 states. And I just tell you, yeah, all right, we've had a long, I hope healthy discussion. I'm going to let Bob Ruccio have the last word, and then I'm going to ask for your response to something.
Just to Representative Bradley's comment, it isn't changing the rules throughout. By September 30th, 2014, no more amendments are accepted to even determine. So the rules will be set for the next primary. Okay, so there's no misunderstanding. The discussion that went on in the committee, disavowing was trying to allow for the person that was, if I, as we all did, put our names to the candidate we chose, and all of a sudden I said, I'm not going to stick with the one I promised you, they would have a right to disavow. Or if they were trying to reach the proportional level which was reflected by the primary, and you chose not to do that, then you would be disavowed. Those are the reasons why you have disavowed. That's trying to be sure you have some order and some semblance to the process.
No, I said, isn't that state law?
It's not state law.
All right, here's what we're going to end.
It is.
I want all the delegates,
General statutes.
the delegates who can vote, I'll see the other way to vote, come over to this side of the room. And I am going to poll you or vote you or whatever.
Okay, so what did you
Just delegates. Just delegates.
No alternates.
Is that alternate? No alternates.
No alternates, just delegates. Because if they had alternates, they lose it.
Yeah, they would lose it.
Alternates could potentially have to vote in the convention as well. I guess.
North Carolina might not be corrupt now, but this makes it so much easier
How
to
can
be
you say
corrupt.
it doesn't impact North Carolina when it gives the presidential candidate the authority to approve or unseat our delegates?
None of us
We don't have that now.
Right. And this isn't a democracy.
Daniel, it was sitting there. We were told that if you didn't go with Yeah, sure. Is it still recording?
Yeah.
Okay.
So just if they take a vote or something.
I got one of these that's in the sign with
Are you coming right back?
you identified it. Anybody got any questions? All right, it's my intention, and I'll be glad to talk to you with Cal come home after we're done. So what? We have been open, we've been fair, we've heard everybody, we'll hear them some more. But it is my intention as your elected chairman to vote this delegation with the leadership against the minority report. If there are a majority of you who are opposed to doing that, raise your hand. The majority of people who oppose. If anybody does not want that to happen.
Were you for Robin or you're against Robin? If you're against Robin, raise your hand.
Absolutely not. Anybody wants to vote no for the big conscience reason, just raise your hand. I'm just taking my word. 1, 2, hold up. 1, 2, 3. Is that up or is that? Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
You missed the
How
lady in
many
front.
delegates do we have, Scott?
He didn't count his lady.
Where appropriate, I will say that we have 9 folks, and we'd be happy for you to change your mind before the time comes. And the whole process is going to change, and the picture is going to change. But for now, to have some certainty, I want to be able to say our delegation is supporting this position. Thank you all for your patience. I know people want to go places. I'll be right here to listen to you.